Before we close the meeting, I'd like to thank you all for being here today and for contributing to the discussions. I hope that you'll continue to do that. If there's anything you want to feed back to us or ideas that you'd like to give us, then please do send them in the first instance to Andrew Traherne, who was in touch with you about this meeting to start with, or indeed to any one of us who's been speaking today on behalf of UK Biobank. I'd like now to invite Professor Sir Mark Walport to make some closing remarks. Mark, of course, is now the UK government's Chief Scientific Advisor, so is in an excellent position to close this meeting and has had a former role with the Wellcome Trust in signing large cheques to provide funding for UK Biobank and has a long history with us in that role as well. So over to you, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think my real reason for being here is that I just saw the last 14 years of my life flashing before me, because Biobank, I think, if not dominating, played an important role during my entire time that I was associated with the Wellcome Trust, from becoming one of the Governor's Trustees in 2000 through to my 10 years as the Director. And I really want to start first and foremost by congratulations. It has been the most amazing achievement. And if I've got two messages, the first is congratulations, and the second, which I will repeat at the end, is this is an incredible resource. It's now up to your collective imagination to use this and to learn the most from it. It reminds me, seeing it from the very beginning, that this started as a very top-down project. So this was an idea. The UK, of course, has a very, very long and distinguished history of research on cohorts, going back to the 1930s and in some cases before. And it's the social sciences and the medical sciences that have, to a very substantial extent, driven our expertise in cohorts. But this was an extraordinarily ambitious proposal. And it's one thing to have a top-down idea. It's another thing altogether to execute it. And the thing that I learned very quickly at the Wellcome Trust was that things went up and down my mental risk register depending on the quality of the leadership. And I have two reasons for my interest in Biobank. 500,000 people aged between 40 and 69. I am one of those 500,000 people, and so I've given away my age. And it started as a very academic-style project, but I think that the transformation that Rory and Tim Peakman and the team as a whole have done is to deliver it with extraordinary effective operations. And I remember when I and my wife, because we're both participants in Biobank, went off to the assessment centre in Hounslow. It was a very different experience from going and having tests done in a traditional clinic or hospital setting. And I think what we've just seen in the discussion of imaging is a completely different approach to imaging. The idea that you could get all those images done at £350 per participant, and I was just talking to Tim a bit about whether that costed in all the clinical costs of the radiologists, and there's obviously some discussion there, but the idea that you could do it for that, I think, is a fairly amazing idea. And I do wonder whether actually the NHS has something to learn from the operational effectiveness of Biobank in terms of actually how we deliver healthcare to patients. And I'm quite serious about that point. So I think that is something that's rather extraordinary. The other very interesting thing is that I think the pride that participants have in participating in cohorts, and I well remember the Bristol effect, which was that the response rate, I think it was about 10% of the people that were invited expressed an interest in taking part in Biobank. But around Bristol, it was about twice that, I think. I can see Rory nodding, so I've got the numbers approximately right. And there isn't actually any formal explanation for why that is, but it may be partly the effect that actually participating in a project, and of course Bristol is the home of ALSPAC, the Avon Longitudinal Study of Parents and Children, And of course, the framing effect, which framing is to a significant extent, framed by that extraordinary cohort study with just a few thousand patients that was, not patients, normal people, conducted at Framingham. So I hope that people who are the participants in Biobank will feel that sense of pride. And I think the evidence, actually, of the high response rate to the request to take part in what is potentially quite an arduous set of imaging investigations shows that there is actually quite a strong sense of ownership of the Biobank project. Of course, anything like this is only as good as the phenotypic information combined with the genotypic information combined with the information on the environment. And I think that the extraordinary thing that's happened over the last 10 years or so is that I think those that thought about this project initially could really have had no idea then that it would be possible to look at 800,000 single nucleotide polymorphisms on 500,000 people in 2014. I mean, that idea would not really have been thought to have been feasible when this first study was first thought about. And similarly, the idea that you might be able to image 100,000 participants in this very intensive way, I think, was probably thought to be pretty unlikely. And indeed, I remember I probably have a slightly different view of this project to those of you that have actually delivered it, because I saw it from the funder's point of view, from the peer review point of view. I remember the peer review, and it was multiple peer review that the imaging went through, and I also congratulate the team on their persistence and doggedness. But some of the peer reviewers, let's say from the other side of an ocean, couldn't believe that the imaging could be done for anything like the costs that this is being done for. And so when you look at this on an international scale, it is being done extraordinarily effectively, efficiently. And I would argue that I think it's going to give extraordinary value for money. But I say this now, not standing here as a funder anymore. And so maybe my perspective has changed slightly. There is an enormous amount of learning. I've talked about what the NHS might learn from the imaging, but we're learning, I think, an awful lot about how you conduct studies like this. And so I think the ethics and the very embedded ethical evaluation that's gotten into this project from the very beginning is absolutely crucial. And I suspect that the publication, actually, in due course of just the study of the incidental findings will be an important contribution to our knowledge. We've seen and heard a little bit about the Prime Minister's Dementia Challenge, and the ability now to plug a project like Biobank into the PM's Dementia Challenge, I think, again, is something that's extraordinary, where you can actually combine imaging with now increased phenotypic information by web-based tools to collect more information about cognitive function. Again, that shows the potential power of the Biobank cohort. And I suspect that the big challenge still is really phenotyping the environment, because that's the difficult bit. And obviously it's extraordinarily important. I'll always remember when a polymorphism in the gene FTO was found to be associated with obesity. A certain newspaper's headline, scientists find the gene that makes you fat. It's not the gene, it is the eating that makes you fat. And how you measure the eating, I think, is still quite a challenge. And of course, coming from the Wellcome Trust, the openness of this cohort has been an absolutely extraordinary feature. And again, I congratulate Rory and the whole team in terms of their dedication to making this a truly open resource. And I think that's the best place for me to finish, which is that it is a completely open resource. And the opportunity and the challenge is for all of you out here and well beyond the Queen Elizabeth Conference Centre to actually use your imagination to get the very most out of it, because it's an extraordinary, I think it is fair to apply the word unique to it, at least at the moment, as a resource. And what I think will excite all of us, and particularly those that have the vision at the beginning to make this happen, will be the discoveries that come from it. Framingham, I think, 4,500 people roughly of that order. And we're talking here about 500,000. And of course, the other project that the UK is conducting at the moment, which is 100,000 genomes, sequencing 100,000 genomes. I'm interested to know at some stage whether there can be any intersection between that study and Biobank, but I think there's a lot of discussion there. But the UK, I think, has the potential to be absolutely, or to maintain its position at the forefront of these very large-scale epidemiological studies that bring together the very best of all of the sciences, from the imaging sciences to the molecular genetics, to the phenotyping, to the epidemiology, to the social science. That is the power of Biobank. Congratulations to the team for having delivered it, and congratulations, I hope, to all of you for using it the most effective way. Well done.